Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited. I really appreciate it. Today's video is going to be a get to know me because the whole time I've been on TikTok, I have never done a get to know me. So get to know me. I've asked lots of questions on my Instagram, so I'll answer the main ones and then any other general ones. But I feel like this might be a long video. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself to answer it away. I think I should. I'm just gonna go with it. So the first question a lot of people want to know is, why did I start TikTok and what made me start rejection therapy? So a big thing with me is I think people look at me, see how I am, see that I'm quite confident, love myself, happy, and think that I've always been that way. But that is very far from the truth. I've had a lot of my own mental health struggles, self-esteem struggles, low confidence, and it's actually from going through all that that's made me how I am now. I experienced a lot of my low self-worth and all that kind of era of my life around the ages of 14, 15, 16, which kind of, it's actually a bit of a troubling time to go through something because that's the ages where you're trying to figure out who you are, who you're going to be as a bit of an adult. So to go through quite a turbulent time around that area of my life, it really stuck like a bit of a dagger in my personality and kind of just made me not really like myself. I had friendship anxiety, had low self-worth, couldn't really control my emotions, and it got to a point where I was very unhappy. And then naturally I kind of came out of it a little bit, but it was in 2020 maybe, I went vegan randomly. I just decided, let's give it a go. And going vegan honestly changed my life. As soon as I went vegan, about 2 weeks in, I just felt like I could see clearly. I don't know whether it was cutting dairy out of my diet or not having animal stuff in me. I don't know what it was, but it just made me feel like I could see clearly. And I also got myself a rose quartz crystal, this one to be exact. And something just changed, and I just started to see the world a bit differently. And I'd gone from really not liking myself, having no confidence, anxious, overweight, to just thinking a bit more positively. And at the time I wasn't really doing this consciously. One like vivid thought I remember having around the ages of maybe like 17 or 18 is I had an ex-boyfriend at the time, and we were driving and he used to just beep at people randomly on the street. And for the first time, I thought in my head, like, that's got such a ripple effect. So you're beeping someone random and that person is then going to have a bit of a response to that and be like, oh, why have they beeped at me? And then they're going to go about their day probably a bit more sad, or it could really ruin the day. And my brain just started opening up to this new perspective. Anyway, things like that started happening over the course of the few years after that. And I just started working on my mindset and completely changed my life by reading self-help books, listening to TED Talks, podcasts. A lot of my own kind of thought processes just naturally changed, and I completely changed my life around. So I became very passionate about mindset and self-development at quite a young age. I'd say 19 was when I went on my self-development journey, and I'm 22 now, nearly 23. But in the last 3 years, my life has just massively improved, and it's all down to your mindset. So when I realised I've changed my mindset, it's changed my life completely, I can help other people. So when I was like 20, I started learning how to life coach people, which at the time I remember people thinking like, you're only 20, how can you be a life coach? But it's nothing about how much life experience you've had. Like, I believe the things I went through and the things I managed to overcome was enough to make me be able to see other people's pain points and able to guide them through it. And as well, life coaching, you're learning techniques of how to help people. You're not giving people advice. That is actually not what coaching is. So I started learning life coaching. So I actually am an accredited life coach. And I did that for a while, like coaching people one-to-one. And then I enjoyed the mindset side of it. I enjoyed guiding people, but I didn't really enjoy just like sat on Zoom one-on-one all the time. I was lacking like the creativity and getting up and doing stuff. So then I decided, like, let's start my TikTok. But my TikTok actually came around because I had a breakup, a really horrible breakup actually. Hats off to anyone going through a breakup. It's a little bit traumatic, to be honest. But I'd gone through this breakup and I thought, you know what, I've actually got nothing to lose at this point. I didn't have a huge circle of people around me. I had like maybe like 3 friends. I thought, they're not going to judge me. Who cares? So I just started making TikTok videos of mindset, self-development tips and tricks. So every day I just upload a daily reminder of something that helped me. And that's where my TikTok started. which then leads me onto how I started rejection therapy. The idea of rejection therapy came around because I went to the park to film a dance video, and at this point I'd never done any kind of dancing in front of anyone, but the thought of putting my phone down and dancing to it and someone walking around the corner and catching me like a dog walker honestly made me feel physically sick. Like, I just could not bring myself to do it. So like when people comment on my TikTok videos being like, I don't know how you do that, I couldn't bring myself to do that, I get it. Like, your brain just will physically stop you. I didn't even push on. I didn't. I documented it for TikTok at that moment, and I was saying to everyone, like, shall I make this a bit of a series, doing exposure therapy? Because doing my mindset life coaching, I knew what exposure therapy was. And if you don't know what exposure therapy is, it's where you purposely expose yourself to what bothers you or you're afraid of, so that your brain learns that it's not actually a threat and you don't need to be nervous about it because it's not a danger, and then you're able to do it. So I said to everyone, shall I do this exposure therapy? Everyone was like, yes. And then that night I saw on TikTok someone do rejection therapy, which is pretty much the same thing, but the thought of doing rejection therapy filled me with so much anxiety. The first video I seen was a girl asking to make her own coffee, and the thought of me going into a coffee shop and asking to make my own coffee honestly made my skin crawl. It made me feel like I didn't want to be judged. I thought they're probably going to think, who the hell does she think she is? And it just filled me with so much anxiety. But I knew from doing all my self-development life coaching that when something scares you, that means do it. Obviously take that with a pinch of salt. Don't go and jump out in front of a bus. But when something makes you nervous, that is something for you to overcome. So I thought, oh my God, this is the next chapter of my self-development journey, doing rejection therapy. Because it terrified me so much. That's how I started rejection therapy. I knew that it would scare me, and I did 30 days of it, and the first 2 weeks, I'll be honest, were horrible. Like, I forced myself to do one every single day, and it was awful. But you know what? It really does work. It's completely changed my life. Exposure therapy does work. I'm now desensitized to rejection, judgment, being perceived in a way I wouldn't want to be perceived. That was a biggie for me. And it all that trauma that was inside of me came from what I'd gone through in the past, back in like high schools, but I'd never healed it. So it was a really good way of like healing that part of me so that I can flourish. But yeah. Okay. Question 2. Okay. Someone asked, what do I like to do in my free time? Have I got any hobbies? So I love dancing and singing, which I don't think I've actually really ever said, but in college I studied musical theatre, and that is a big hobby of mine. And I was always a bit nervous to say that, because I used to think people may be like, oh, you said you had social anxiety, but you did musical theatre. Like, how does that work out? But it's completely different. When I was on stage, that wasn't me. That was almost an escape outlet. But then in my daily life, I would stop myself from putting myself forward or sharing my ideas or at work or reaching out to an old friend, because what if they didn't want to see me? And it's completely different. But have got a theatre background. You can probably tell. Like, I'm very pantomimey. Yeah, I love singing and dancing. And then other hobbies, I quite like going for cold dips, any kind of breathwork, sound bath, any wellness things. I love all that. And then recently I've been trying to do a new hobby of colouring, learning the ukulele, trying to keep the mind active because I'm very addicted to my phone, which I'm trying to overcome. 4th question, a lot of people want to know what my plan was after school. Did I go to uni? What jobs did I have? Yada, yada, yada. So I didn't go to uni, but I was planning to. Did my GCSEs and then went to college and studied just musical theatre. And my plan was to go to drama school in London, and it got to my 2nd year and everyone started auditioning, but my gut feeling so heavily just all of a sudden was like, don't go. Like, have another year practicing your craft and then go. And that was such a conflicting thing, because I was 17, and it's such a big decision to decide not to go to uni. And at this point, I'm very spiritual now, but at this point I didn't really, my eyes weren't open to that world. So to trust your gut instinct when I wasn't familiar with trusting your gut instinct was a big thing. But I just remember when I was trying to find my audition songs to audition for drama school, I couldn't find one that worked. Nothing was easy. I just couldn't find a song. And now that I am spiritual, it's because it wasn't meant to happen. So if something's really hard, it's because it's not meant to happen. I decided I wasn't going to go to audition at drama school and take a year off, do a gap year, carry on practicing with singing, dancing, get more confident at it, and then go and audition. That was my plan. But then that gap year was COVID, so everything's short, my singing lessons short, dance classes short, and no one could work. So I was like, oh right, well, I'm having a break now, clearly. And it kind of fizzled out. I think, although theatre girlies will know this, but I think it can be so draining doing musical theatre. Don't get me wrong, the feeling of being on stage is unmatched. It's such an amazing feeling, but when you are doing it for a career, it becomes draining because you don't know when your next job is. Getting a job can come down to the colour of your hair, your smile, your looks. And when I was in this gap year, I kind of thought to myself, is that what I want for my life? And I thought, no, it isn't. I don't want to live out of a suitcase. And that just wasn't life for me. So I had a break of doing my dancing, and whilst I had nothing to do, twiddling my thumbs, I started to volunteer at a animal rescue, fell in love with animals. At the same time, I'd just kind of gone vegan. So this is where everything started to become a lot lighter for me in terms of my self-esteem and building my mindset. And I decided that I wanted to go down the route of working with animals. So I was searching for an animal job, and I ended up finding an apprenticeship at a vet's and worked as an animal assistant and got an apprenticeship in that. Worked there for 2 years, and it was honestly incredible. It was such a highlight of my life so far, and I'll always look back at that time in my life with such fond memories. But it got to a point where I thought, this isn't what I want to do. It wasn't creative enough for me. I was walking around the vet practice singing and dancing all the time, and I was like, I'm craving being creative, because obviously I wasn't doing my singing and dancing anymore. So I was like, well now what? What do I do now? I've got musical theatre as a BTEC and an animal assistant qualification that I don't want to use. Now what? So I then spent ages thinking what I wanted to do. Primary school teacher, journalist, but everything just was coming as a thought and then passing by. And then I saw a job for social media marketing, and it was actually being a content creator. And I've always made videos growing up. I'd also dibbled my feet into doing UGC work when I was on apprenticeship. The wage wasn't amazing, so I was doing UGC. So I did have a bit of experience in social media, but I just thought, you know what? I think I'd be so good at doing content creating for a brand. It said on the interview thing that I needed 2 years experience, but I don't really think I had 2 years experience. But I just absolutely went for it in my interview. I showed up with a whole presentation of why I'd be amazing for the job, what kind of things I could do for their social media, and really sold myself. And this is my first proper big girl job. There was 4 interview stages. It was obviously way better pay than being an apprentice. Anyway, I got that job, so that was amazing, and I really fell in love with creating content. And I always felt in my bones that that was a stepping stone job. Didn't know where I was going to end up, but I just knew that this was a really good stepping stone. And that really pushed me out of my comfort zone, that job, because I had all these underlying fears of being judged and perceived. So when I had to go into this gym, the social media I did was for a gym. I had to go in the gym and film myself working out and stuff, and that filled me with so much anxiety. All these gym bros there lifting the weights, and I'm there hi guys, come with me. Anyway, it was a really good stepping stone job. And then around the back end of that job, I started my own social media, doing my self-development stuff, never with the intention to do that as a job. Don't get me wrong, it was always in the back of my mind, if that happened, then amazing, but that was never the goal, to do social media just so I can leave that job and do social media full time. And it just so happened that I have fallen into, now that I do my own social media, which is such an amazing thing, and I'm so proud of myself. And I think if you do want to do content creation and you've got a passion for it, just absolutely stick at it. That is the story of how I got to where I am now. I feel like this video is going to be quite a long one. I hope you got your cup of teas. Someone has asked, am I spiritual? And the answer is yes, massively spiritual. It's something that I'm okay with talking about now. For ages I used to think it was a bit taboo, and I don't want to tell people I'm spiritual, but why not? I am so spiritual. I wholeheartedly believe that everything happens for a reason. Our souls were already planned out. Our life path was pretty much planned out for us before we came. I believe we have spirit guides, angels. I believe that the spirits and our loved ones are with us. I'm a big crystal person. I believe in energy. I believe everything you put out comes back to you. I could talk about spirituality all day, but I've had 2 spiritual awakenings, and I'm so glad I have had these spiritual awakenings because it honestly changes your life. Like, I just see the world so differently. But yeah, I am very spiritual. The final 2 questions. One is, what's your star sign? And I'm an Aquarius. I bloody love being an Aquarius. Can you tell? Don't know. I can always spot another Aquarius. And then the last question is, what are your kind of goals? And I'm a big believer of going with the flow, and I'm very open to any opportunity that serves me in a positive way. But I'd love to be on TV. I think I'd be so good on TV. Either presenting or being on like a reality game show or something. I just think I'd be really good on TV. So that is a goal of mine. But I'm going to leave it there. I hope you all enjoyed getting to know me. It's actually quite weird spilling so much information out. Normally I'm just on TikTok, but I hope you enjoyed. And if anyone's got any other questions or any video ideas you'd like to see, please pop them in the comments and I'll be sure to give them a read.